Hello guys, welcome back to The Crew RMD story part number 3. We have done more or less the story. We have done the skill test, everything is on platinum. We have done the faction missions. We took a look in PvP, worked our way up from bronze 4 all the way to platinum 1. Situation is we are somewhere in April, May 2016 and I'm playing for about 2 months at that time. Of course, seeing I bought the complete edition, I also found a couple of different cars in my garage, meaning, or more specifically, different specs. So I bought the 370Z as my first car, and that also meant that if I went to the, for instance, Monster Tuners, that I found this thing there available to get. The same for the drag and the drift cars. And then you drive around and you look around on the map and then you find some monster arenas as well. And I thought, oh well, let's give it a go and see what stuff can be done there. Of course you have no clue what you're doing. To give you a simple idea, at first I was just jumping around a little bit till I saw a couple of videos. You do all kind of stupid stuff in the arenas, and that's what you do in the beginning. And you're sort of slightly moving because, yeah, we've done everything that was out there on the map. So the only thing that is more or less left at that moment on the map is the summit. No clue how to get there. My first summit, if I recall correctly, was probably the May summit, I think. Maybe the April summit, I'm not so 100% sure now. Because I recall being there when the first stunt race was available for the bikes, and I think that was in April. So I probably, first one I participated in was like the stunt race summit, which was I think April 2016, when they did all the patches on the bikes and stuff like that as well. But you find the arenas on the map, so you go there, take out a monster spec, and you try some stuff. That's more or less what you do. You jump around a bit. Then you get involved in the summit and you start messing about in those events a little bit. But it took me, I don't know, a week or 2, 3 before I actually realized that you could just not only jump with these things, but you also could do some sort of combinations, like a backflip or whatever. I knew you could do the backflip, I just didn't figure it out at that point, which buttons to use for that and so on. So it took me a while, but eventually I got there. I got involved in it. In the summit, the first summit, I paid 180,000 bucks for it, because for the simple reason I had no clue that you had something like 3 Dash Challenge that could put you in the qualifiers, and then you could go from there, do some qualifiers. In that period we had qualifiers for 3 days and a half. That meant that we had 2 qualifiers every week, which was a good rhythm, I found personally. Not so like it is now. Now we have 1 week qualifiers and 10-day summits. Back then it was 3.5 days qualifiers and 1 week summits, which was pretty good. And you could win like a car every month, and the next month, in case you missed it, you had another shot at winning it. So you sort of won a new car every 2 months, more or less. That's what it came down to. And at first you're messing about like I just was here now, just messing about a little bit. And you score, I don't know, 25, 30,000, 35,000 points, something like that. Meanwhile, you also see some videos on YouTube and you see like, yeah, this 370Z probably not that bad, but there are better monster specs out there. And so you get something else. I think one of the first that I bought was like the Skyline, and that's a pretty good one, which you can use in most of the arenas. And getting involved in the summit, that's all fine. But yeah, you need to have something like where you could like show up on the leaderboard here or there. You can show up on other leaderboards, but by showing up I mean like getting noticed. And for me that was more or less the Monster Arena. I started with that, started concentrating on it, went to the Monster Arena, spent several hours in it, in all of the arenas, trying to find new combinations, trying to find new routes and stuff like that. And then you also find some bugs like there where you just like more or less jump through it and the system decides to not give you that score. That's also a possibility, of course. You go too fast and you jump over the last 500. And so you play around a bit in that. You come up with some combinations, you come up with some route, and then you get something like this. Not only do you score pretty good, but you show up in the top 8 of one of these arenas. And not only in this, like now this is like a practice run that I do here, but not only here, also in the summit itself, in the events. I started to show up in top 8 in Monster Arenas, started to show up in the top 8 in stunt races and stuff like that. Also in the skill tests I got more involved, trying to get some decent score there. And yeah, week after week your name shows up in the leaderboards. And that's when people say, oh, there he is again. At that time I was also getting involved in YouTube. Yeah, I was posting these videos, these like runs like this, I was just posting them out there. And then of course people saw that you were not cheating and that you were like really doing the run and coming up with these combinations, and that's like not some sort of cheat, whatever. and they see your name show up in the leaderboards, and yeah, that's when more or less the summit story started. At one point I got invited by Paraglider. He was playing with a Core and Sayun, and they were sort of looking for a fourth guy, and I started playing with those people. And they of course were there from the beginning, from 2014, and they had some inside track knowledge and stuff like that, meaning they knew the shortcuts, they knew which car to use, speed traps, which routes to take, and stuff like that. And at the same time, I was doing pretty well in the Monster Arena. My videos showed them the cars that I was using, the routes that I was taking, so we were sure of sharing information, and were a pretty good team at that moment, with some top 50, top 20 overall rankings as a result. Back in those days, we were still 2016, yeah, it was a bit, the summit was a bit of a grinding event. Because next to the 9 events, with skill tests and time attacks and monster arenas and stunt race, you also had all that free drive situation going on. Free drive challenge, free drive stunts, and also summit PvP. Summit PvP, I like the idea behind it, the execution a little bit less, but the idea that everybody is driving the same car is a pretty good one. But of course, just like in the normal PvP, you are dealing with too strong of a slipstream and ramming collision zone and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a bit of the downside of it. And the other downside is that in Summit PvP you only have like 7 events available, 5 races, and then 2 of the more fun things like a crown or a blitz or something like that. Of course, yeah, as a racer, those fun mode things, our opinion on that is, in general, competitive players, general opinion is those fun modes should always be in a separate lobby, and definitely should not have any influence on your personal league. You race as hard as you can to get up there, to get to the Platinum 1, and then you do like a stupid crown event where people ram you from A to B and back, and you lose 11 league points over it. Can happen. That's another reason why I stopped playing PvP. Racing, all fine. Blitz, crown, and all that kid stuff, that's what I call it. I don't want to be involved in that. And seeing they have mixed it in the lobbies, a lot of people choose that, and yeah. Each to their own, but I should not be forced to play that. That is my opinion on it, and that's sort of what PvP is, so that's also the reason why I kind of moved from PvP to the summit at that point. Got involved in the teams, but then at one point, yeah, people, some of those guys, they were also involved in other games, so they were only playing occasionally and so on, which makes it a bit more harder to do that all. And then at that point I had some guy called Valister. He was kind of bothering me on Uplay in such a way that he sent a friend request, I refused, he sent another friend request, I refused. It kept going on like that. The reason I refused is because I didn't know him. I never met him. Well, apparently later on it turned out that apparently we exchanged some information on the forum once, which I didn't even recall at that time. And but anyway, he kept sending friends requests, and eventually I thought, well, I'm gonna accept this guy because he keeps bothering me, so I will, with the request, so I will just accept him and see what it's all about. Turned out the guy is the same as me, as from Belgium, aka a fellow countryman. We started talking, and he was looking for a team. He was also involved in Summit, but was playing with random players, and occasionally also, yeah, in a way, also got some results and showed up in some of the leaderboards, and that's sort of also the way that I started noticing him, and that's another reason why I at one point accepted. So we were talking, and we decided to create a team called BRCT, the Belgian Racing Competition Team. We did like 1 or 2 qualifiers with it, but we had a bit of a problem, seeing it was just the 2 of us. A team of 2 for some of the events is a bit of a problem. You actually need 3 or 4, like for instance for drag or for speed trap or something like that. It's always easier to have more people about than just 2. So we decided to drop the B because we were kinda restricted on Belgian players by naming it that. So we dropped the B and we made RCT. At first, Dreamkeeper and Rezaray joined us, and a bit later, I think a couple of qualifiers later, we also ran into GoPro IMAX, and he also joined RCT. So there we were, 5 players. We started playing, and well, it turned out we were a pretty good team. Not only just showing up in leaderboards and stuff, that's not even what I mean by a good team, but we had mainly good team players. That meant we played, for instance, we played 2 hours, and each and every one of us had sort of 20 minutes, 25 minutes of gameplay, if you can call it that. That meant that the team was driving for me for 20-25 minutes till I had like decent scores and said, okay, I'm fine with this. And then we drove 20 minutes for Valoster, and then we drove 20 minutes for Rezaray, and then for Dreamkeeper, and then for GoPro, or the other way around. Sort of equally divide your time. In other words, we did not have any selfish players in our team, which even up till today, like 2.5, 3 years into the game, we probably looking back, that was more than likely the best team. Also for teamwork wise, the best team that we had in the all of the years. We have played with other players, we have played with other teams. Some people were not around that much, other people were simply selfish, where everything had to do or turn around them. They saw the, can I get a score now? Yeah, sure. And we were like driving for half an hour or an hour for that one person. And then when the time was there to sort of switch it up and get some slipstream in some sort of event, then he had like 1 or 2 runs, and then they had to go shopping, they had to go dinner, and that's all fine, and you didn't see them back, and then the next day they were there again, but then they wanted to do something else, and so you not really had good scores in certain events because they were like too selfish. We also got involved with some of those people, but yeah, that's how life is, I guess. But RCT was a pretty good one. Team wise, probably the best cooperation out there in the 3 years that I'm playing this game. And so we moved on, played some more, and then 2016, for instance, in the summer somewhere, I think, we suddenly started noticing something in this summit crap thing, and that was, well, it was crap in that way that you had all these events which were like skill based. You had skill tests, you had time attacks, you had monster arena, stunt race, all that. More or less you need some skills and driving skills, that is, for most of the events. But then we did those 9 events, and we were not so much fun of the grinding event, so we usually kept them till last. And that sort of meant like you sort of have a situation like this where you have done all of the 9 normal events, going from drag, drift and so on, and you had like free drive challenge, free drive stunts and PvP unranked, because we still had to do that. That was something we did like in the last day or the last 2 days. And at a certain point, yeah, we were like, one of us was like 3rd overall, the other one was 5th overall, and the week went on, and we were still not ranked in free drive challenge and free drive stunts and in PvP. And that also meant that, yeah, we were not dropping in the overall ranking for some reason. So at that moment in time we realized, oh, they have changed something here, but yeah, which is a big problem with Ubisoft Ivory Tower, communication. They did not communicate it. So we sort of had to figure it out ourselves, that these 3 events do not really count much. If you get a bronze medal if you don't do anything else than those 3 events, or one of those 3 events, you will get a bronze medal just because you participated in the summit. But other than that, they don't count for anything. So you can just leave them, as I have now here, you can just leave them unranked. And as you can see, I'm 15th overall. If they would count those 3 events, I can assure you I would not be 15 overall. Because why did they take them out? Yeah, I think that's pretty simple. Because, like for instance, in the free dive challenge, there were people with bots and scripts about. The same goes for PvP. They used script and bots, and they were not even there. And they were like, in theory, they were doing a free drive challenge, but in reality they were just here on the Bonneville salt flats, and they were doing like circles all over the place because they have like programmed some sort of script, and the car was doing circles and circles and circles, and that sort of was considered a free drive challenge. So more looking back, it's probably a really good thing that they took those 3 events out of the ranking. Why are they still here in this summit thing? Yeah, because ever since this summit thing was out there, they didn't do really much of change on it. They brought the stunt race into it, but that's about the only change that I can recall that they went into this whole system thing. Now, of course, at the end of 2016, they brought calling all units, which will be covered in the next video in this series. But it will be a pretty short one, I can assure you that. Because the summit is related to the Wild Run. The Wild Run is probably, for my personal opinion, one of the best expansions ever in the game. Although it was DLC, it was a pretty good DLC. It was definitely worth its money. You had the summit competition, you had bikes, you had 3 new specs being Drift, Drag and Monster, and next to that, or in a later stage at least, they brought the free drive challenge, they brought the free drive stunts. So there was a lot involved in that one DLC, which already makes it a good one. And also the content that was there was also pretty well organized and all made sense. 2016, calling all units, yeah, that's probably the opposite. That's probably the worst expansion ever in a game, for several reasons, which I will explain in the next video. But meanwhile, we're at the end of 2016, we have Summit Finale, we have the last car there that could be won, which was the Mercedes AMG GT. And then in January 2017, they sort of came out with the news that they would stop with bringing Summit reward cars. So from that moment on, you could not win a car every 2 months. Probably has to do with licensing. At the same time, yeah, they sort of stopped supporting the game in that way. Were not many updates after that, and yeah, the reason for that we know by now. They were working on the Crew 2. Also, back then in 2016, there were some rumors, or were it some leaks, I don't know, but there was some rumor that they were working more or less on a sequel. Although it was never confirmed, but yeah, that sort of news will never be confirmed until the moment is there, which was last year in E3 when they actually announced it. This thing here, the Mercedes AMG GT, was that way the last car that we could win. Later on they brought yeah, not even that long ago, December 2017, 3 years of the Crew anniversary was sort of celebrated with the circuit spec of the Mazda MX-5. But that was just a spec they brought, they sort of gave as a gift. That was not a car on itself that was there. So this one was sort of the last thing, and from that moment on, they yeah, it all went a bit downside or downwards with the summit, because they started repeating the qualifiers we did the year before. 2017 qualifiers and summits are a repeat of the 2016 qualifiers and summits, and not only did they start repeating it, they also prolonged the time for it. Qualifiers went from 3 days and a half to 1 week qualifiers, and summits went from 1 week summits to 10-11 day summits. So yeah, a bit downhill. And then we had like 2018. Yeah, then they sort of decided to keep going on with that. Repeat of a repeat of a repeat, sorta. That's more or less what it went down to. Because now we are more or less doing repeats from the repeats that we did last year. So it's like, yeah, it's getting a bit ridiculous. Never than that, next to that, yeah, we're still playing. Although there was nothing to play for, we were still playing more or less with other teams in some sort of friendly competition, sort of trying to beat each other. That was sort of our motivation to keep going in a pretty sportive way at first. And that was all fine, but now, yeah, now we come to the point that I think you can say that it's more or less time for something else, being the crew 2 or whatever, but because the summit at this moment is turned into something buggy and glitchy all over the place. There were already some bugs and glitches around, but it's getting worse and worse every single time. To quickly go over it, you have these 3 skill tests here on top of the screen, and there are like the 3 worst are probably speed, jump, and hill climb. In this case, we only have a hill climb here, which is a bit of more or less of a trouble, but there are summit qualifiers and summits itself where you have like speed, hill climb, and jump. That for me is already good enough reason to not even start on the thing, because it's like, yeah. The hill climb, good idea. Execution 0.0, because the idea is to go to the flag, drive up to the flag. As soon as you hit the starting gate on the bottom of the hill, there's a countdown starting on top of the hill on that flag, 5,000 or 10,000 points, and it's as soon as you hit the starting gate on the bottom, you get a countdown, and that's all fine. And you drive up, you get points for climbing up the hill, and also for reaching the flag. You will get whatever is left from the countdown of the flag, and that's all fine. Unfortunately, they made one big mistake. They only put like 5 or 10,000 points on that flag, and the result of that is that nobody is driving to the flag, because very often you reach that flag with like 10-15 seconds left, and then you look behind the flag and you see like higher mountains, higher hills, so people just keep climbing, and you can score more that way than actually going for the flag. And that is how people pretty fast get a hang of it, and they did that. Then the word got out that there was some glitch with a bike. If a bike flew up, you actually get really good points in a hill climb. So people started trying that, started practicing it and getting it to point. And now we end up in a situation. Hill climb, it's pretty simple. You take a bike, you put it against a tree or a rock. A teammate hits you and you fly miles high. You score 20, 30, 40,000 points. Solution for that, pretty simple fix. It's never been fixed, but it was a simple fix. The only thing you need to do is put like a 0 behind the points on the flag, and the whole thing was solved. Instead of 5 or 10,000 points, they put 50,000 or 100,000 points on it. Everybody would drive to the flag, because that would be the point where you can score the most points. But no, they never bothered with it, so people are doing hill climb glitch. For the jump, there are fences, there are posts, there are trees out surrounding the area you have to jump. If you hit one of those things and you get lucky to not get the landing on that post or on that fence, you actually fly further, you can get more points. So it's more like bouncing off something to get more points. And then the speed skill is, you do the speed skill no matter how hard you try and how fast you drive. There are always some idiots who drive less fast, but they will press Alt Enter at the end. Alt Enter will give you 2,000, 3,000 points more. Alt Enter is like, it's sort of a bug linked to the function that it actually has, and that brings full screen to windowed mode or the other way around. And if you do that with like 2-3 seconds to go in that skill test on the speed skill, you will get a few thousand points more. So what you do not want to see is a summit or a summit qualifier with those 3 skill tests: hill climb, jump, and speed, because then you're like escape. Not so really a problem. It's just like escape from a certain point. As far as I know, there are no bugs or glitches. Might be one particular one here or there, but not in general. There are not like bug or glitches related to that one. Neither for the slalom, also not for raceline. Raceline over time became a bit of a teamwork, of course. Doing some slipstream, pushing each other, stuff like that. But it is still that's teamwork. That's something else than all these glitches and bugs. Speed trap, also nothing wrong with it. Time attacks in general, also nothing wrong with it. Of course, there are some shortcuts here and there. If it's normal shortcuts, I'm okay with it. Not so much okay with the shortcuts which you have to take with like jump and then reset the car on the other side of the wall or whatever. Those reset shortcuts, that's already in a way also a bit buggy and glitchy, because that's not the idea. But yeah, it is out there, and that's how we do it. Then we come to the drift. That's also over time become a bit of a problem. You have like also here Alt Enter at the end gives you 30,000 points more in drift. Anything else? Yeah, you have circle jerking. At some points you have like a big parking lot or something where you can remove the cars. If you reload the cars, if you restart the event, the cars do not reload. So you can just do a circle on a parking lot or whatever, and that will give you way more points. The multiplier will go up slower, but you get more points for each of the multipliers, scoring 200,000-300,000 more than people who just follow the track and to the end. So it's pretty much bugged. And from what I hear, if you play around with the FPS, you can get more points as well. Which brings us to the main factor, drag. Drag, ever since the summit is out there, has been a problem. Because at first you had something called the clutch bug. If you used manual clutch and you pressed the clutch like crazy, the car just kept going. 500, 600, 650, 700 kilometers an hour, it just kept going. That clutch bug was a big issue, people were aware of it, people were complaining about it on the forums, they never bothered to fix it. Till a certain point when they brought calling all units and they needed our money, then they decided to suddenly fix it. So suddenly they could fix it. I guess that's gaming business. Yeah, it is what it is. So they fixed the clutch bug. Yeah, and then it took like a couple of months of normal drag racing, which was a pretty good feeling at that moment. Till some other people started playing around with the settings. Put the game on lower settings, playing around with 8 times MSA and such like that. And that actually seemed to work. So at that moment in time, we done a bit of digging, and so it has to do with lag and stuff. So we thought, okay, we're gonna put it on 27 FPS then. Why 27? Well, that is something we have tested. There are programs out there, a lot of them, different ones depending on your video card, to help your video card, to keep an eye on your video card, especially if you're overclocking it. You want to keep an eye on the temperatures and such like things. Those are programs out there who can like give you a complete look on your video card so that you can keep an eye on it. But most of the times, those programs have like some sort of frame rate function as well, and you can change the frame rate in whatever it is you want to. And yeah, that people have been playing around with that and ended up with 27 FPS being some sort of magical number. So you put like, let's say you go into the drag with a team of 4 people, 3 people play on 30 FPS, one guy locks his video card on 27 FPS, and you will get like a little bit of a delayed start. But because he has 3 people in front of him, he still gets a slipstream and he catches up, and on the finish line, 4 team members come over the line at the same time. But because the guy from 27 FPS has had a delayed start, he will also have more or less a delayed finish time. And the result of that is that the 3 people that are on 30 FPS will get like, let's say 14.5, while the guy on 27 FPS, although he finished at the same time, will get 14-second time. More or less, on longer tracks it's about 400-500 thousandths of a second. And that's why you will see very often, you will see if you look on the leaderboard in the drag, you will see certain times, sort of a group bunched together which have like certain times, and then you have another group which will have about a half second slower. And yeah, that's where the difference is. And then you have 1 or 2 tenths more if you use manual clutch. It's no longer clutch bug, but it just in general manual clutch is faster than automatic clutch. That's not like a glitch or a bug anymore, but that's just how it is. But the 27 FPS definitely it gains you about half a second, especially on longer tracks. Maybe a bit less on other tracks, but that's why you see those differences in the drag. So it's FPS related, and the latest news that I got here is that also the FPS has a function in Monster Arena and Stunt Race. If you put it really low, apparently you can sort of do your twists and turns in such a way that it goes so slow that it actually gives you an extra flip or stuff like that. And then you suddenly see people show up with like super scores, which, yeah, 5,000, 10,000, maybe even 15,000 points more than they were doing in the past 2 years. And then you're actually beating specialists like Fujisuki, who was always number 1 or number 2 in Stunt Race and Monster Arena because he was just good at it. He was like the king of those things. And the result of it is now he gets beaten by 4 or 5 different people who are playing around with the FPS. That's how it sort of turned into the Summit 2018. So we have all kind of events related to FPS. We have all kind of events with bugs and glitches, and it's always one after another. In such a way, it slightly became a little bit boring and not really putting in the effort that we normally did, because we sort of gave up on it. With too many bugs, too many glitches, and so we stopped playing. Although I'm still playing, as you can see, but you will not see me show up in the top 5 very often. Unless there are some normal events, like in the last qualifier, where we did not have to do like anything special, like with alt enter or play around with the FPS, stuff like that, and then you can still end up in the top 10 or in the top 5 overall, if you put some effort into it. Now I'm 15 and I didn't even bother that much, as you will see. For instance, in the what is it, the drag 50 third, I just done a run here on I think even on 60 FPS with one teammate, and we just played a bit there on Slipstream and ended up 50 third. If I improve this, if I put the system on 27 and we sort of go there again using the Mustang, I think, on this track, then we probably end up in the top 10 somewhere, and then I might be able to get into the top 5 if I really want to, but I don't really want to. The Summit was a good idea, was a pretty fun mode, had a lot of fun in it, had a pretty good team around at one point, being RCT, good team members as well, team players, all dividing the time, helping each other out, and at the same time getting some good scores ourselves. That's sort of the story from the Summit. And that is, yeah, even today is more or less the main part as a competitive player that I played around in this game. I'm not so much of a cruiser, which also means that a lot of these awards that are related to the cruising around or cruising around in a crew or stuff like that, those are mainly the things that I am missing. I don't know if I mentioned in the previous video, but these award things, yeah, there are some of them. I started doing them, but at some point I came across a couple of bugged ones, aka I could not get 100% completion, and that meant that I stopped doing them. That's also why I'm lacking about 1200 points. Like for instance here, the Midwest, I've done all of the awards needed to do to get the Midwest in the zones category. And then that last one, which sort of gives you, what is it exactly? Achieve 100% completion stat in the Midwest. So I've done 15 out of the 16 awards, so I've done all the awards possible to do in the Midwest, and still the damn thing says, nope, you haven't completed it at all. You're only at 98%. Yeah, of course that's totally blocked, because normally if you have these 15 done, you should have the 16th as well. It's bugged, and there are a couple of others which are bugged. Like I'm still looking for 3 years now to that apparently one animal that I'm missing for the zoologist award. I mean, seriously. I've run into every animal about 150 times, I think. Including the unicorn and Bigfoot and the big whale and whatever. I don't even know if those things count for the zoologist. But I sort of got stuck on, I think, 89% or something. And then you have to... yeah, I'll sort of finish the video with that. There are also some horses, and the horses you can find, for those who don't know yet. My God, you have Port Isabel all the way in the south here, and then if you follow that road, you will see here is I'm gonna put myself here on Port Isabel, because you actually have to drive there. So if you drive away from Port Isabel, you will actually see some sort of ranch here. It's called the Silver Steed Ranch or something, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Silver Steed Ranch. Let's have a look. There are some stables there, and there are a few fields about, and let's see what we can find here. There are two things you can find here. There is some sort of pen out there. If you drive up there, you will actually see pigs. So that already might trigger you a couple of percentages in case you haven't found those things for the zoologist. And then if you drive into the silver steed thing here. Here in the stables, also here on my right here, and also in front of me here, you will actually see some horses. As you can see, they are not about, because they are also here a little bit bugged. I will try to see if I can get them by going to the headquarters. Is an opportunity to sometimes it works to actually see those damn things. You go to the headquarters, you go back out. Bam. There you have them. Suddenly we have horses. As you can see. And that might trigger the zoologist from 89 to about 93 or 94%, I believe. But I have no freaking clue what the other percentages should come from, so pretty much it's bugged. There are people out there who have like all the award points, the all 15,000 something. Like for instance a core. He had those things completed, and that was if you were early in the game, you could. There was not a problem, but with the wild run coming into the game, it also sort of brought along some bugs, and one of those things was related to the awards. Also with calling all units involving the police awards, some of them are related to police, with bringing in calling all units. Also some extra awards got bugged over time. But for those people who already were there from the beginning and already had like certain of these awards unlocked, they will be able to achieve 100% completion of the game. All the rest will not, because some of them are bugged. That was sort of part number 3. You more or less went through the story of RMD in the summit. That's what we more or less did. Not so sure what that horse is intending to do. Or like climb a mountain or something. Weird stuff happening in the game occasionally. Which leaves us with one more part to cover, and that is the calling all units, and then also working our way up to the launch of the Crew 2. Might also talk a little bit about that, but yeah, I am a bit NDA bound, as I will try to explain in the next video as well. I will see you guys then, and bye for now.